It is that time. I'm going to push the got recording, got it, so it's not in the way of everybody else. Hey, we've got somebody all the way from Massachusetts. Hello, Clark.
Montreal.
And Montreal. And anyway, happy Saturday in all time zones and a little bit of Sunday for Australia. We have yet another, I forgot to count. It's probably 76, 77, session 78. I don't know. Been an amazing amount of fun doing this. And we have a speaker today who has not joined us before, but we're glad to have him with us. And we've been doing several hysterically related things lately, and we're getting back into the technical today. Ed's going to talk about site calling and possibly a few other things. And so today's gentleman is a square dance caller. Calls anywhere from mainstream through challenge. Is it C3A, Ed, or
Yep.
that you said? Or
Yep.
He's been calling for 57 years.
Yeah.
Things have progressed nicely through that time. Called in all 15 states, 14 countries.
15? We have 50 in the country here.
Oh, I counted wrong on your list. And I think one of the best credentials is he's got somebody who's done all that traveling also has local clubs, and there are 3 local clubs that he has called for over 50 years each. And that's amazing. I think that's great. Yeah. He also is a member of Caller Lab, accredited Caller Lab caller coach, has been on the board of governors, and a biggie has been awarded Caller Lab's highest award. Well, it was highest at the time. I think that the lifetimes have maybe gone beyond that. I don't know. But anyway, a recipient of the Milestone Award, which is a very elite few. Authored many books and note services and monthly magazines, and all the way from Pennsylvania in the United States through the miracle of Zoom. So it doesn't matter where you're from, except it's fun to know. Let's have a hand for Ed Foote. Ed, friend, take over.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I think it's very impressive that Dawn runs these sessions for you on a regular basis. It's Dawn, along with Bill Wilkinson, this is really doing a big service for square dancing by having all these people come on and present in all their areas of knowledge. So I think we all should acknowledge the fact that Dawn is really doing a major service for square dancing here. Before we get underway, I want to establish the experience level of those that are here, because I recognize a number of names, and I'm wondering, let's do it this way. Raise your hand if you have been calling 3 years or less. 1, 2, 3, and I'm clicking on 4, 5, 6. Okay, of you 6, 2 years or less. Anybody 2 years or less? And I'm clicking back on my arrows here. Was there 1? Okay, those that raised your hands, are you, since we're going to be talking a lot about site calling today, are you all doing site calling to some extent at this point? The people that raise your hand, let's put it this way. If you are not site calling at all and only using modules, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right. What we're going to do today is, let me run through what we're going to do and the procedure here, and then we'll get underway. First, we're going to start off with methods of resolving. And we're going to talk a lot about site calling today, people tend to think of site calling as resolving. That's really only 5% of the game. The rest is what you do before you resolve. It isn't my intention today to plod through the step-by-steps on the various methods. If any of the newer callers want me to do this later on, I'll be glad to do this. But because it looks like 85% of the callers know all this, I don't want to take the time to do that. I will discuss it a little bit at the outset. So I'll let you know what we're going to do. We're going to start with the 3 methods of site resolving that I use. Then we're going to discuss how to remember primary and secondary couples. And my rule of thumb is you must remember primary and secondary couples in 3 squares. And a lot of people say, that's ridiculous. I'm lucky to do 1. Well, we're going to show you how to do it in 3 squares so it isn't a big deal. Then we're going to go into things on what you do before resolving, which is 90 to 95% of site calling. And we're going to look at the value of setter's trade, which is a concept. Some of you have heard me do this before. It's a vital concept and has never been written down. And so we'll show you this. Then we're going to go to Dixie Grand. Now, I know you had Dixie Grand here 2 months ago, and it was a good presentation. I went back and looked at part of it. And what I'm going to do today on Dixie Grand is just expand on that and try to give you some formulas. I'm big on formulas and lists. And so having said that, I encourage you to consider taking notes as we're going along, because I'm going to be giving you formulas and lists. And if you don't take notes, it's all going to just go downhill into a giant morass. So I encourage you to take notes. Once we've done Dixie Grand, then we're going to go into sophisticated site calling resolves. And the 5 or 6 people that raise their hands, this section won't be for you, but it'll be interesting to you. You'll be able to hopefully pick up some things, but we're going to look at sophisticated site calling resolves. And then after that, if there's any time left after that, I have a few other topics. We do want to solve today any site calling problems you have. Any site calling problems you have, we want to resolve today, or at least tell you how to resolve it. And we'll probably wait and do that at the end rather than at the beginning, because we want to concentrate on these other areas. Maybe halfway through, we'll stop and say, does anybody have any site calling problems outside of what we've been discussing? But mainly we'll do that at the end. In order to keep things moving along, I encourage questions and comments at all times, but I'd like to do this in little segments. So I'll speak on a little segment of my talk for like 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Then I'll stop and say, anybody have any questions or comments? And at that time, we'll do that. And if you can do the raise your hand thing on the screen, and Don will monitor that rather than raise your hand physically raising your hand, raise your hand on the screen thing. Don will be monitoring that, and Don will also be doing terminations today. I'm not that great on the computer, and so it's better if an expert like Don handles terminations when we get into moving people around. All right, having said that, we'll start, and I'll just mention from the outset, the 3 methods of site calling that I have used forever are facing line site, 2 face line site, and isolated site. For the newer callers that raised your hand earlier, I recommend isolated site for you to start off with that, because that's the simplest method to use. That's where you keep, you look at one side of the set and just concentrate on those dancers. I'm going to say this, for the newer callers, I want to emphasize that you should be working constantly on modules. there's a tendency to get into site calling too soon. And if you get into site calling too soon, then you wind up becoming top heavy. You have the site calling, but you have no foundation. We know when a building doesn't have a foundation, it crumbles. Your square dance calling building will crumble if you don't have a strong foundation. So what do I mean by a strong foundation? The ability to move faces from one place to the next. It was very interesting to me. About 2 weeks ago, I did a seminar, an on the mic seminar for 6 callers, 4 of whom were teenagers. And these teenagers only been calling 4 months. And the other 2 callers were only like 20 and 22. So they were young also. And the person who was teaching them had taught them facing line sight, even though they're only calling 3-4 months. But we all know teenagers are smart and they learn fast. So they all knew facing line sight. They knew the formula for facing line sight, could rattle it off, they could do it. So I was impressed with that. The problem was they couldn't implement it. They didn't know how to move one face from one place to the next. So for instance, if we had a facing lines and the primary man was the left end of the line and the primary girl was at the right end of the line, they didn't know how to get that girl over to the primary man. And so I told them in kind of a fun way, I said, what you do, you move the set so that the people you want together, they're facing each other, then you can go over and grab them, whether you do a flutter wheel or a lady's chain or whatever. So fine, we get underway and somebody remembers what I said, we had that situation. So they said, pass through, bend the line. So now the primary man is looking at his primary partner. And they said, star through. And that got them together. That's great. Then they didn't know what to do. They didn't know to call swing through, boys run, bend the line. Now they have their facing lines and now they can implement their get out. So they were top heavy. They knew the formula, but they couldn't implement it by moving faces. That's why it's vital to work modules when you're a newer caller and just work them so you have these modules and you know how to move faces. Then once you can move one face from one place to the next, now it's no problem to implement the site calling. After there's a limitation to isolated site, I'll mention that for the new callers. And so the other 2 methods, facing line sight and 2-face line sight, I consider 2-face line sight slightly easier. And I encourage you to do that. Of course, all of this is on the Call Lab website. And so it's all there. If at the end of this, you want some of the newer callers want me to mail you some of my handouts on this, I'll be glad to do that. But 2-face line sight is a little easier than facing line sight, but not by much. Not by much. Facing line sight came out, 9-10 years before 2-face line sight came out, and it was fun. All right, let's pause here and take any questions or comments on these methods. And the newer callers, don't hesitate to jump in with a comment or a question. Don't feel that because you're new, you don't want to say anything. No, everybody's been new, so feel free to jump in. So any comments or questions on what we've said so far?
I don't see any hands up.
No. Either I did a good job or everybody knows everything. All right, so great. We're going to move on to remembering primary and secondary couples in 3 squares. Now, why is it important for 3 squares? Assuming you have 3 squares in today's environment, but because if you can only remember 1 square and that square breaks down, you're down the drain. You don't have any backup. But the odds on 3 squares all breaking down at the same time is very nil, very, very small. So you just go with the odds and you have primary and secondary couples in 3 squares. Now, as I said before, some people say, I'm lucky, I can remember 1 square. I can sort of remember 1 square, which is 2 couples. but I can't remember 6 couples, 3 squares, no way. So I'm going to give you the steps for how to do this. And it's all mind training. These are mind training techniques, this kind of thing. First of all, and this is very, the experienced callers know this, the newer callers may not. In these type of seminars, we tend to use couple 1 as primary and couple 4 as secondary. And we'll be doing that later today when we do terminations. But I want to emphasize, you don't want to necessarily do that when you're picking your primary and secondary couples. Some newer callers say, well, they always pick 1 and 4, so that means you got to pick 1 and 4. No, the rule is you pick the easiest couple in the square to remember, and that's your primary couple. In square A, it may be couple number 1. In square B, it may be couple number 2. And in square C, it may be couple number 4. A basic rule of thumb for establishing primary couples: no mental effort. You look at the square and a couple leaps out at you. If no couple leaps out at you, if that square, if you look at a square and it's totally blah, everybody just is a nothing to you, you don't use that square. Because if you do, you're going to violate the rule of no mental effort to remember the primary couple. You want your mental effort to go to remembering the secondary couples. And if you have to expend mental effort on remembering the primary couple, you're not going to have any left over for the secondary couple. So the first thing is choose squares where 1 couple leaps out at you for whatever reason. They're wearing matching colors. They're good friends. They're tall and they stand out, whatever. But the key is the primary couple can be in any location in the square, 1, 2, 3, 4 position. So now how do we remember primary and secondary couples in 3 squares? We're going to look at our home club first. At our home club, you're going to have permanent primary couples. They're not just permanent primary couples for that night. They're permanent primary couples for life. You're going to use the same primary couples every week, every dance that you call for this club. What happens? If you're always using the same couples, you're not going to forget them. It's just a mind training technique. You're not going to forget these people. These people are so ingrained in your mind that you're walking down the street and one of them is approaching you and you say, hi, primary couple. They're just so ingrained in your mind. You can also, if you want, try to establish some permanent secondary couples. You look like a secondary couple to me, for whatever reason. So if you have permanent primary couples, and I'm talking 4 or 5 permanent primary couples, not just 3. Some may not be there some weeks or whatever. So you want to have, I would say, 5 permanent primary couples. Well, that solves half our problem. We want to remember primary and secondary in 3 squares, which means 6 couples. We got our problems half solved. We got the primary couples remembered with no problem. Now, the question people always ask is, well, what happens if several of them get in the same square? And the answer is, you don't use that square for that tip. Or you can establish a rule for yourself. A rule you might establish, and you can establish whatever rule is good for you. But a possible rule might mean the higher letter the earlier letter in the alphabet is the primary, and the secondary, and the next letter is the secondary. So Allen is the primary couple and Jones is the secondary couple. And they squared up like that, fine, no problem. Now, what if Jones squares up and Allen is to their left? Well, then you don't use that square because they didn't square up right. If they don't square up right, forget them. And that's why you have multiple primary couples. So if they do get if a couple of them get in the same square, you got other squares that you can bail out to. now all your mental effort is going to remembering your secondary couples. Now, what happens when callers establish their primary and secondary couples? Everybody's squaring up. And so this is a typical way, the typical mannerisms that a caller will establish his primary and secondary. You're like, okay, everybody square up. We need a couple over there. Oh yeah, there's a primary couple there. I'll use them, and it's good for secondary. So I'll remember them. And okay, and now we get underway. That's no good. There was not enough mental intensity there. Compare with the way I just described, a typical way that a caller will remember primary and secondary, with the method I'll show you now. I'm saying to myself as they're squaring up, for the next 7 minutes, this is the most important thing in my life, and I will burn these primary couples and I will burn these secondary couples in my mind. See the difference in intensity? And then your mind says, hey, he must be really serious. He wants to remember this stuff, so maybe I'll work to do this. That's it. You have to have high degree of mental intensity. Don't just lollygag and lackadaisical through it to pick these people. You want to burn them into your mind with intensity. As a guest caller, you do the exact same thing. You establish permanent primary couples and permanent primary couples. How do you establish permanent primary couples? If the club has pre-rounds before the dance, that's great. You just stand there and here come all these people revolving pie in a circle. Yep, there's a primary couple. That couple doesn't do anything for me. I forget them. Here's a couple matched in green. I'll remember them. And you have all your permanent primaries for that night selected before the dance even starts. Now, all you have to do is remember the secondary couples. All right, comments and questions on what I've said here.
I could just comment from Sweden that doesn't work here because we don't dance, couples. You change partners all the time, so that wouldn't work here.
I was going to
California.
I was going to get into that. And the thing I didn't mention is writing down couples. Generally, I'm against writing them down, and I'll give you the reasons why. But there are 2 occasions or 3 occasions when you should write them down. One, as in Sweden, if everybody mixes tips, you got to write them down. You're not going to be able to remember. Second, if you're calling for the LGBTQ clubs, they change all the time. They don't only change partners, they change sexes. A girl's a man one tip and a girl the next tip. You got to write them down. There's no way. And the third is if you're calling, say, a tip at a national convention where you got 50 squares on the floor and you're under a lot of pressure and all these people looking at you, it's probably good to write them down there too, because you're you're just under a lot excuse me, under a lot of pressure. So in those cases, it's okay to write them down. It's interesting. A while back, a number of years ago, I was doing a lot of calling for the gays, and especially out in California and Seattle. And Seattle was interesting. And I took it on as a personal challenge to see if I could remember who was primary and secondary without writing them down. And so this was like a fun thing for me. And I'll never forget in Seattle, they told me one time that a big name caller who came through every year and everybody enjoyed dancing to him, he insisted on having a, quote, normal square down in front of him. Normal boy-girl couples who would stay that way all night so that he didn't have to worry about how to resolve with these people changing partners. And the gays all looked down on him a little bit for doing that. Here's this top caller, and he has to have a fixed square in front of him. And I've never forgotten that. And so I had a great time calling for that.
Ed, we have had a couple of questions show up.
Okay, go ahead.
You want to keep it? David,
Go ahead.
you were first, I think.
Yeah, one of the problems we have is we purposely try to mix up people, either by computer rotation or just by asking people to change partners.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. In other words, if that happens, you got to write them down. I'm going to give you my reasons why I don't want to write them down, but recognize that I do feel it's okay to write them down in these particular cases. And that's one of them where everybody changes partners all the time.
Daryl, you had a question too? You had your hand up?
A comment first. Ed, you're doing a fantastic job. Love it. And I'm sure you're going to probably cover this a very, very minor thing, but to me, it seems to be major, I guess. It's nice to remember the two couples, but for me, I always remember it as the corners and their partners. But the primary thing to me is going to be who those corners are. If you get the corners, those two corners together, everybody has their corner.
Right. And
So
you
that's
know
a
who
very
their
important
partners are, so you're all set. And I should say at the outset, there are all sorts of site calling methods, and they all work. And the inventor of the method says it's the best thing since sliced bread because they know that method better than anybody else because they invented it. So that's fine. And whatever method anybody wants to use is fine with me. I don't care what method anybody uses as long as they can get to a corner fast. And we're going to talk about that later on. So I could care less what method it is, as long as they can prove to me they can get to a corner in 15 seconds or less at any given instant, fine. I have no problem. Any other?
I wanted to mention that my hardest part of site calling is memorizing who started with whom, and I'm lucky if I get one square, and I've been lucky to survive on that. But a lot of the hints you're giving so far are good ones. Where were you 50 years ago when I needed this?
Well, I was telling these same things 40 years ago.
I missed
Clark
the view or missed this in the view, but I'm told in the chat that Clark has raised a finger.
He did. Yeah, I was just about to say that. Go ahead.
Cool.
So what happens to me, one is I'm lucky to remember one square. And often I have people who don't have regular partners, but what happens in my mind is I look out there to try to find the square I'm going to watch and who's the obvious couples in the corner pairing, etc. And my mind comes to a pretty quick conclusion of, oh, this is going to be easy, which is good, or the thing that I don't have a good solution for, crap, I'm screwed. And usually when it decides it's screwed, I'll look around and all that, and maybe I'll write something down. But generally that tip goes poorly because of that instant, I can't find anybody. I've got to get the needle on the record. I've got to start calling, and I don't have everything memorized. So I don't have a good solution for that, but I do see it happening.
Okay, so what was I going to say here? Again, it all comes back to mind training and mind intensity. I mean, I am paranoid at not being able to get to a left element. I mean, it's like I'm driving down the wrong side of the interstate. I mean, this is just a disaster. And so because I'm so shook by this, then that forces me to put more mental energy into remembering who these people are. And especially Clark and I, and a number of you, the rest of you call challenge. And there, if you don't remember, they'll chew you up and spit you out all over the floor. So you got to remember there. And even if you're using prepared material, you better know you better know these people. You better know them right off the bat. So let me get on the line of why I don't like to write them down, but remember that I said it was, in my opinion, it's okay to write them down for those three instances that I listed. So number one, if you write them down, it's a crutch. It tells your mind, mind, I don't have to concentrate on this because they're written down. So it keeps your mind from feeling it has to be an intensity here. Second, when you're looking down at the paper to see who you have, you're not watching the floor. And this can result in a loss of timing, et cetera, et cetera. Number three, it's important to be able to get to the corner quickly in order to give the dancers the carrot of a reward for having successfully completed the choreography you've done. But if you have to look down and say, okay, who is it? Where's that square? It's taken time. Time just keeps going on. And instead of being able to reward the dancers quickly when they've just done something well, in other words, you've built them up for success and now you hit them right here at the top. Instead, if you have to look down, find where the square is and remember who it is, you build them up and now it comes back down again. And by the time you get to left Allemande, it may not have the excitement that it did before. Likewise, if you've called something and half the floor breaks down, so you want to get everybody back to a left Allemande fast to get everybody going again, that's another reason for not having to have to look down. Where are they? It's just taking too much time. And then the final thing, and this struck me when I first started calling. When you're up there and you're writing down who your primary and secondary are. And when I was I was a newer dancer, well, not even newer, after I've been calling for a while, these big name callers come in. I mean, the biggest names in the country. And they got all these squares out in front of them. And what are they doing? They're up there. Okay, everybody, square up, square. And you see them writing down. And I thought to myself, what a loss of image. Here's this big super caller that they're paying all this money to, and he has to write down who his corners are. And there, it wasn't a case of people were changing partners at all. Everybody's keeping their same partner the whole night. So that was a loss of the image to me. So that's my reasons for not writing them down. But again, if you have to write them down, fine. I will say if you're new to sight calling, the newer callers that raise their hands, go ahead and write them down at the outset. But try to wean yourself off of this after about three months or so, or go slow. Write them down, but after 3 months, 1 tip a night, you practice where you don't write them down and see if you remember. And then you go to 2 tips, and then you go to 3 tips, etc. But again, if you're calling for singles, you're calling for a club that mixes everybody up, go ahead and write them down, because the bottom line is you have to be able to physically call. That's the bottom line. And if the only way you can call is to do whatever, then you do whatever, because you have to be able to call. Now, there's one other thing I should mention here, and this is primarily for the newer callers. What happens as you go along if you forget who your primary and secondary couples are? You've done everything right, but you just forget who they are, or maybe the unusual thing has happened and your squares where you selected your primary and secondary have all broken down at the same time. What do? Several different options. Number one, at your home club, pick a man and ask him who his corner is. Now at your home club, you know who goes with who. So the man you ask, that becomes your primary couple. And the girl he points to is the secondary couple. So now you have them. And so now all you'd have to do is worry about the sequence. So once you get the primary man, the man you ask with his partner, and then the person he pointed to as his corner, get everybody with their partner. Then you get everybody in a starting double pass through position. You say centers make a right-hand star, find the corner, Allemande left. Then another way to do this, if you forget who who people are, if 2 couples have their original partner and 2 don't, and you know one couple is right, but the other couple, you just have no idea who the other adjacent couple is, you get everybody in a starting double pass-through position with the matched couples in the center. Now you half sachet them, such as box and out or right and left through and half sachet, then call center's right-hand star, find the corner Alaman left. And then finally, if you are a guest caller and you don't know anybody and you've forgotten who your primary and secondary are, then get everybody in a circle, normal boy, girl circle, say 4 men, star by the left, pick up your partner with an arm around. And they may have to sashay, but they'll get their original partner. They'll keep promenading. Then you say somebody wheel around, pass through, wheel and deal, center's half sashay, make the right-hand star to the corner. You can do that once a night, twice a night possibly. If you have to do it 3 times, you probably won't get paid because they'll know you don't know what you're doing. So those are emergency bailouts. They aren't to be used on a regular basis. Okay, comments on all of this?
I'm going to start off with on this, Ed, with, well, I had 2 comments. One back about writing down. All your disadvantages you were talking about writing down. One of the reasons I started writing down ignores the first 4 or 5 reasons. Granted, it's not good for the last reason, but I found that the act of writing them down helped me memorize. And every time I wrote them down, I never had to look at what I had written down.
And you're right. I forgot to mention that, and other callers have said that too. So that's and the reason I don't do that is because of this mental picture that I still have of the floor looking up at me and saying, look, he's got to write down who he has. But you're right. Other callers do that same thing. They write them down, then they never look at it.
The other comment, what you were just saying about on occasion when you totally have lost what's going on somewhat and you've matched up a couple and you pick your friend, your key man, and say, who's your corner? I have found it's a lot easier. Usually if I got to the point where I knew it was either the corner or we were out of sequence and it was the corner's opposite, rather than asking people who's your corner, I would say, is that your corner? Most people don't always remember who their corner is, but if you just say, is that your corner, you're more likely to get a yes or a no. And
What if the answer is no? Then you got a couple other choices remaining.
Right. If the answer,
I wouldn't ask that question.
Well, if I got one couple paired and the other one not, and I just can't remember whether I've got to pass through or square through 3/4 of the corner.
Yeah.
I just say, is that your corner? And that gets me, the whole floor. I don't ask one particular person. I ask the floor, and I'll get enough groans or what have you that it gives me an opportunity to a quicker answer from them. And
Right.
I know if that's not your corner, I know where your corner is, kind of thing.
Right.
Any other, I kind of hogged the comments here. I've been writing.
I
mine
noticed
down.
that Larry Marchese has his hand up.
Oh, there's Larry.
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say, I have used that right-hand star thing once, and it works fine. But also, when I'm calling in my area, which is in Denver, on the rare times that I forget, I'm pretty good at guessing. I don't know what to say about that. I know the dancers really well in my area, like all of Denver. And, the thing is I just not panic. Panic starts to rise up in me, but I just blow that off, try to get my bearings. And I'm surprisingly good at guessing. It surprises me.
And you'll do good in Las Vegas.
Yeah, there you go. So don't panic, and just scan the squares, especially if it's your home area, and then make a guess, and then if it doesn't work out, make jokes, laugh about it, and just make sure you're solid as a rock the next time.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm so paranoid of not having a corner, I'll establish my 3 key squares at the start. But as I'm calling, I'm always looking to pick up a 4th one on the fly. And if I can, even 5. But I'm always looking to pick up a 4th. The more insurance I can have, the better.
There's also the option that I've only had to use once. I've heard others do too, and especially if you've memorized key couples in several squares, is I have resolved with a head couple, with the number 1 couple in one square and the number 4 couple in the other square. And because one square is sort of, some of the people are broken down or some of the others, it's possible to use multiple squares to do it. It's not an easy thing, but if you've memorized people in more than one square, it works out. And I'd like to say, Larry, that you've been lucky at guessing, but in general, my thumb rule is if you're guessing, you've got a 70-30% chance of getting it wrong. But
That's my odds.
Well, the important thing is that you guess just once a night, no more than that. Just it has to be a one-time thing. It's an emergency.
And learn by your mistake, I hope.
Yeah.
Any other comments for Ed before he proceeds on? We're going pretty well.
All right. The next, one thing
I had a quick comment, just real quick.
Go ahead, Steve.
One of the things I do, and it's helped me out a little bit, is yes, I'll write down my my key couples there, but what I will do is I'll do a couple memorized sequences to get myself to my corner. And as I'm doing that, I'm making sure it helps me do that a couple times. Then after that, I call right on the fly, and then I should be able to hit my corner every time after that.
Yeah, Steve makes a good point, and it's a point I was going to make and I forgot to make. Another mind training technique is once you've established your primary and secondary couples in 3 squares, at the very start of the tip, call several quick left Alemans, using each square at a different time. And by quick, I mean 20 seconds in a left Aleman. And you get them back home, you call it another 30-second sequence and get them out again. By using each square once, you have reinforced in your mind who you have chosen, and then the odds are that you will remember them later on down the line. So that's a good point from Steve. Okay, well, if for no more questions, let's move on to our next thing here. And we're going to need terminations for this on. The value, one final thing. The newer callers at the beginning that raised your hand, do you have any questions on anything that I've said so far? If so, raise your hand, because we're not leaving you out. We want to make sure you're following along here. All right, I guess we don't. All right, now we're going to move along to a topic called the value of centers trade.
Ed, before we do this on terminations, do you have any particular way you want the dancers colored?
No, this is fine.
And you want the numbers showing or not?
Yeah, you leave the numbers on.
Okay.
Although we're not going to use them for this part of the talk, but just leave them on.
Okay. And lastly, just to everybody, please let me know if the dancers are moving smoothly or jumping. Sometimes my computer balks. I've got most everything else off, but if we're not getting smooth dancing,
we'll test it out. Move them a couple places.
Well, all right, we'll give it a shot. If not, I've got somebody else standing by. Mel.
Head star through and spread.
Oh, I just did a head square through 4.
That looks pretty smooth to me. I think
That was
good.
Okay.
All right. So the title of this is Value of Centers Trade. It's never been written down. This whole topic was first emphasized by Jack Lazary, top caller back in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And I was going to write it down, but I'm so poor in the computer that I can't do it without having diagrams, and I don't know how to do diagrams on a computer, so that's why I haven't written this down. It deserves to be written down, but I'm not the one to do it. So anyway, we're back to squared set. Do a head star through and spread.
What?
Head star through, double pass through. All right. Pass through, wheel and deal. Girls pass through. All right, this is our setup, and forget the numbers and everything. It's what I call a same-sex 8-chain through formation, which is what we have, same sex in the middle, same sex on the outside. Now, as we're going along, and let's say we want to resolve, and we're ignoring numbers here completely, and we know the first thing we want to do when we resolve is to get the square normal. And we want to normalize the square to get people with boy girls together. So the obvious thing to call is star through, but don't do it yet. We see that star through will normalize the square. All the boys will have a girl on their right side. The problem is, what's the next call we're going to call? Look at the dark blue boy up there in the upper right corner. And don't move them, but just you'll be able to see in your mind. Picture him doing a star through with that green girl. When he does a star through, his body is turning to the right. What's the next call we can do that will be smooth for him? The answer is nothing. If we do a wheel and deal, it's a reversal of body flow for him back to the left. If we do a Ferris wheel, it's a reversal of body flow back to the left. If we do a couple circulate, he has to come back to the left. And of course, since we know a mirror image thing in the square, it's the same thing for the green boy down in the lower left corner. For the other 6 dancers in the square, everything is fine. Whatever the next call is, it's going to be smooth for them, but it's going to be unsmooth for those 2 boys. So what is the solution? Now, and the rule of thumb is, of course, in choreography, if it's unsmooth for anybody, you don't call it. So even though you could say, well, 6 out of 8 win, that's not the name of the game. So what's the solution? The solution to make whatever your subsequent call is smooth is after the star through and before the next call, you insert a center's trade or boys trade, and they'll trade by the left. That smooths out the square and enables the next call, whatever it is, to be done smoothly. Now, the obvious comment that people make is to say, well, you did a star through and the boy is turning to the right. If he trades by the left, he's going back to the left, the same as all those calls you named. So why isn't it the same thing? And why isn't it just as bad as calling any of those calls? And the answer has to do with the science of kinesiology. And kinesiology means the studies of bodies in motion. And when we call the star through in the boys trade, we don't call it star through pause boys trade. We call it like it's a clump call. A clump call is 2 calls that are said so fast they seem like one call. So I would call it star through boys trade. The boy has hardly started, has barely touched the green girl there before I say boys trade. Now the star through, he's raised his right hand up. That has raised the center of gravity. basic rule of thumb is in anything, the lower the center of gravity, the more stable you are. That's why the center of gravity in a building is in the basement. It's not on the 10th floor. That's why football players run crouched over. They don't run standing straight up vertically. So if we call star through boy's trade, and the boy hasn't even begun his turn to the right, he now has blended into that trade. And now whatever the next call is, circulate, Ferris wheel, wheel and deal, whatever the next call is going to be smooth. And that's the value of center's trade. So it now becomes a rule which says from a same-sex 8-chain through formation, anytime you call star through, you must call center's trade after it. If it's an opposite sex form 8-chain through, then this doesn't apply. We're only talking about a same-sex 8-chain through formation. Any comments so far on what I've said? And we're looking at the blue boy there. A lot of experienced callers, I mentioned, a lot of experienced callers know this. And if you go to a dance by a top caller who's calling for a big, huge floor, you'll see them insert these centers trade. They know this. But
Ed, do you want me to dance these guys through it?
Well, yeah. The trouble is the way
Taminations does it. Yeah.
Do it. Put your speed up and do it. Put it on fast and see what happens.
It doesn't do much different, but whoops. Click over here, I guess. Oh, I have to type it in again. Start through center's
I
trade.
think I see what's going to happen now. See, Taminations doesn't understand kinesiology. So they're doing the complete star through, and then they're coming back to the trade. So they're letting the blue boy complete the star through and then do the trade. Well, there it went so fast we couldn't even see it. So
the other,
Go
just
ahead.
to give a little alternative, doing the same thing if the girls are on the outside, you don't have to do center's trade. You can do chain down the line.
All right, let's put the girls, do a pass through and turn back.
So I could do star through here and then chain down the line.
That's true, but you better say that chain down the line really fast.
Again, it's the same center's trade that you were talking about.
The same centers, same centers trade.
But
Now,
just
excuse me, if you're calling advanced, you can throw in cast a shadow, and that works okay. I tend not to talk about advanced very much on when I'm doing these things in
Makes sense.
Zoom Plus. So that's the concept of center's trade. Now we're going to continue on with this, but I want to be sure that everybody understands the basic idea of this. That when you do the star through, you're immediately going to say boys trade, and then you're going to give your next call. Everybody got it. Do the new callers understand what's going on here? And again, don't hesitate to, if you don't understand it, jump in and say it again or something.
Ed?
Yep.
We're from a different era, and I'd never heard club call, but I like that term for it anyway. We do remember a time when star through California twirl as a combination was very, very common. I don't think we hear it these days because of the partner trade or the pass-through trade by situation of having the hands up and all of that. But yes, but then I would have to agree with you after a star through California twirl, center's trade might be very, very nice to set up for the next movement.
Well, I'm looking here. I'm looking at the red girl. And so if I call star through California twirl, have her trade, I guess for some reason I don't like it a lot, but I can't really say why, but it just doesn't quite feel right.
Yeah. Like I say, we wouldn't call it these days. You almost never see that combination anyway. But I just thought it was interesting the difference in the era.
Yeah. All right. Let's so let's get these people, square them back up.
Is it okay
So
to
we
jump
were-
in for a second?
Go ahead.
Yeah, an alternate that I like in my brain, it's called the quarter through rule. I get it from advanced, but I like touch a quarter from the same sex box like that. I like touch a quarter centers trade,
Right.
which if I want to wave, and of course if the girls are on the outside, then I'll have a normal ocean wave when I finish that. So I tend to go that way.
And I explain it the way I do so that newer callers can understand it, that the whole world can understand it.
Right.
You're right, but everything you said is right, but that's almost another topic almost, because touch a quarter, we're looking at we're looking at normalizing boy girl, and when you touch a quarter, you're not normalizing. That's okay because you know what's going on, but that's why I don't show that here.
Okay. Well, I think of it as a normal ocean wave. But yes, not normal couples.
Yeah, it's a normal right-hand wave, but it's mixed sexes.
Okay.
Okay, Don, get us back to squared set. Heads pair off, make a wave.
Whoops.
All right. This, and the newer callers, watch this, because this is going to happen to you. You're in this setup, you want to resolve, so you want to get normal. You want to get normal couples. And what do you see? You see that if the boys run, you're going to have normal couples. And that happens all the time. Okay, unrun. So from ocean waves, when the ends run, it's the exact same situation as we had on the same-sex 8-chain through. If the ends run from parallel waves, the next call must be centers trade. Otherwise, whatever the next call is going to be unsmooth for somebody. Look at boy blue again, blue boy. When he runs, same as we had before. When he runs, his body flow is to the right. If we do a couple circulate or a wheel and deal Ferris wheel, it's not smooth for him. But if we do a centers trade and we say it immediately, so as he's doing the star through, he's already into the centers trade and he's still touching the girl's hand. Now it's smooth. So this gives us a second place where we must call centers trade to make it smooth. And that is whenever the ends run from an ocean wave. Now, what I've discovered is newer callers, they're looking to normalize. So they'll say boys run and they don't recognize that the boys are the ends. Well, you got to recognize it. Anytime the ends run, and we say that because sometimes the girls could run if we wanted to. Anytime the ends run, the next call must be centers trade. So this presents our two, what I would call blatant examples of the value of centers trade. Now we're going to move into the subtleties of centers trade.
Ed, let me just throw in, when we're looking at that blue boy going here, the centers trade, he's following, well, actually in some of the cases, his footsteps are following exactly the same as they would be on a circulate or something else. But the advantage of the centers trade is that he's hooking onto somebody and so has counterbalance and is trading with that person.
Well, from here, the way you have in the left-hand wave, so from here, to have boys run circulate, the blue boy is fine. It's the red boy that's the reverse.
Yeah, let's just do a U-turn back so we were where we were. So if I do a boys run here, and if I do a couple circulate or all 8 circulate, he's going the same place as a trade. Except with a trade, he's got somebody to hang on to And again, as you say it early enough so he's got that left hand.
And he's lowered his center of gravity.
Yeah. So even though it's the same footsteps, it's the counterbalance, giving weight to the person the other direction. It helps make it smoothed out.
Yeah.
The
flow. I just want to comment on that if I can, Don. The flow on that is the same, but if you're going from the outside to the inside, your center's trade is that because of the kinesiology of the movement. But your hand contact, when you do the run, you're maintaining the hand contact as a couple when you're doing a couple circulate. So you've still got that balance and that contact to offset the flow.
I'm also going to interrupt here for a moment, and I'm going to. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. We'll go back to that in a second. But I've noticed the hour's gone by very quickly. So I want to do the usual on the hour thing, and then we'll continue on. But thank you guys for showing up. Thank you, Dan, for physically hosting or electronically hosting.
Well, we're not nearly done yet.
Yeah, I know, but we usually do this after the hour and then we'll continue. I want to give as usual, if you have only designated an hour, feel free to walk away, push the leave button, and you won't make anybody upset. However, you don't want to miss the rest of it, so you're going to watch the video afterwards.
If you leave now, you'll miss the best part.
Let's have a big hand for Ed at this point anyway. Ed, thank you. And now we will continue. Hang around. But I do suggest, Ed, that you, because it's been an hour already, that you leave the Dixie Grand for another week, because that'll, unless it works really smoothly.
Well, after the center's trade, we're going to get into sophisticated sight resolves. And one of the sophisticated sight resolves involves the use of Dixie Grand and how easy it is to use Dixie Grand. So if I don't show how easy it is to use Dixie Grand, because a lot of people are afraid of it, then I mean there's a method to this.
I'm here. I hear you. Okay.
All right. So where the heck are we? Facing lines. Just do a bend a line. So we've established two blatant positions where you must call center's trade. And that is same-sex 8-chain through a star through, you must call center's trade. And from parallel waves, when ends run, you must call center's trade. Now we're going to get into subtleties. The subtleties that will make your dance smooth as compared to some other dancers. If we call from here, well, let's just say this first. The whole world calls pass the ocean, swing through, boys run, bend the line. Or pass the ocean, swing through. The whole world will call pass the ocean and swing through. Look at any girl and visualize in your mind before Dawn moves the checkers. What direction is the girl turning on the pass the ocean? Now we know the definition of pass the ocean says pass through, make a military right face 90-degree turn, and step straight ahead into an ocean wave. That's the official definition. Does anybody dance this? No. Nobody dances past the ocean this way. Instead, when you call past the ocean, the girls will join left hands part way through and will swing themselves into the wave. So therefore, recognizing that this is what happens, then if we come back and call swing through, it's a reversal for the girls because the girls are turning left and they have to snap back to the right. Now, it's not blatantly awful for the girls, but it is a slight reversal for the girls. And it's interesting. Girls will often say at the end of an evening of dancing, I just feel kind of tired. I feel tired because I don't know why, I just feel tired. And the men say they don't feel tired at all. And the reason is because the majority of callers are men. And so the men say if it's smooth for the men, it must be smooth for the girls. And there are a lot of combinations that aren't quite smooth for the girls. And the men just sacrifice the girls, don't even think about the girls. And there's a lot of combinations that are called that are not smooth for the girls and are smooth for the boys. And that's why the girls are tired at the end of the night. So if we acknowledge that when we do a Past the Ocean, the girls are finishing the Past the Ocean by left hand hinging themselves into the wave, and then we call swing through, it's a little reversal for them. So what's the solution? We call Past the Ocean girls trade. And the girls trade follows right into their hinging themselves into the wave, and now it's smooth. Past the Ocean girls trade swing through dances like a charm. And it's a very smooth for all the girls as well as for the boys. So my suggestion is, now am I saying every time you call Past the Ocean, you can't call swing through? No. What I am saying is suggest 30% of the time when you call Past the Ocean, make your next call centers trade. Just consider doing that. That'll smooth out your calling. And go ahead, throw them in do a Past the Ocean now. And we see that the girls are going to. And you see, well, they actually did it there, a little bit of the hinge to the left to get them into the wave. All right. And then we can call whatever we want. So that's the first subtlety here. And that is to suggest 30% of the time when you call Past the Ocean, make your next call centers trade. All right. Now, explode the wave and partner trades. We get them back to facing lines. You know, I would think that Taminations would come up with a verbalizing thing, so you didn't have to type it in.
You know, it does on handhelds, on smartphones, but it doesn't. I don't think it works on this.
Okay, so here's another subtlety, and don't move the dancers yet. A lot of callers, and even established callers, will call this combination Past the Ocean and recycle. I want to give dancers practice on recycle, so I'll call Past the Ocean wave. Now I can call the recycle. First of all, I think this is a dumb combination, because if you're going to put the dancers in a wave, do something in a wave before you take them out. To put them in a wave and then take them right out is illogical. But on top of that, if we call Past the Ocean and recycle, it's a direct reversal of body flow for all the girls, because the girls are turning left on the Past the Ocean and they're coming back on to the right on the recycle. But if we put in the call girls trade after the Past the Ocean, then the recycle is fine. And we've done a wave type call, so it isn't illogical now to take them out of the wave. So if we do the combination Past the Ocean girls trade recycle, it's all smooth and wonderful. And you can move them through that, I guess, if you want.
Sorry.
What the heck was that?
I didn't specify. I had the girls recycling. Let's see. We're going to do a Past the Ocean semicolon will make it work. Girls trade, recycle. Oh, come on. Past the Ocean. Oh, we got to go back one more here. Past the Ocean, girls trade, and recycle.
See, Intaminations didn't dance that well, because they did the full girls trade and they paused and then they did the recycle. Well, if you throw in the pause, then that's a reversal for the girls. It all has to be blended. That's why you have to have perfect timing on it. So now we have established We have these two blatant examples. We have these two subtle examples. So now this gives us an overall rule to follow. And the overall rule is you never can have too many centers trades. Or to say it another way, when in doubt, call centers trade. Centers trade, I mean from ocean waves or two-face lines, not centers trade from facing lines or lines facing out or any other place. It's only from ocean waves and two-face lines. You never can have too many centers trades. When in doubt, call centers trade. Comments on this?
Yeah, I'm just being facetious here, Ed, but I can give you an example of don't call of too many centers trades. If I call from facing couples past the ocean, centers trade, centers trade, centers trade, centers trade. There's a little bit of overflow in there, just giving you a hard time.
Let me rephrase this a different way for the intellectual person that we have in our midst. You never can have too many centers trades, but you are never allowed to call two calls back to back. And we don't do that generally anyway. I mean, we may call circulate twice or something like that, but you're never allowed to call centers trade twice. That eliminates that problem.
Sorry about that.
So now that ends our centers trade thing. Any comments on that? All right. We're going to move on to Dixie Grand.
Actually, Ed, I do have a comment on that. Swing through centers trade. Some people say the 360 turn for the centers is overflow. I think it's fine. Just curious of your opinion.
I agree with what you said. There's a disagreement among Caller Lab caller coaches on what is overflow. Is anything more than 3/4 overflow, or is anything more than 360 overflow? Everybody accepts 3/4 is fine. And everybody says that 1 1/4 is too much. So the question is 360 overflow? I agree with Don. I don't think it is, but some well-known caller teachers will say it is overflow, and fine, that's their opinion. Any comments on this before we get on to Dixie Grand, because we want to move along because Don is watching the time.
No, I've stopped watching the time. I just check for 1 hour and then go for it.
I have a comment. So
Yeah.
instead of saying boys trade in the middle, could you not say and circulate and have the boy standing still for a little while, and then the bad body flow would be gone?
Oh yeah, let's have them stand still for 10 minutes while we go out and get a sandwich. There's no body flow problem at all. But the whole idea is that dancing is flow and keep going. So we never want to have stop start calling.
Like when the boys are trading, the ends are standing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But barely standing, because it's all one. We're saying it all as one call. Star through, boys trade, couples circulate. The girls are finishing their star through and they're immediately into the circulate. There's virtually no standing for the girls. But the key is, does the caller give it with the correct timing? Timing is vital here. That's why newer callers, they hear this presentation, they understand it, but because they're new, they're still calling stop start, and the thing it loses its value. The whole key on this is smooth. We don't want any stop start. Now, granted, we'll sometimes have stop start. We'll say pass through, wheel and deal, centers, do something, the outside just standing around. So that's considered acceptable. But in this case, we wouldn't say star through, pause, and then boys trade. If we did a star through, boys trade, from that 8 chain through, if we did the star through and then just did a pause, now we don't need a trade. Now we can just do the couple circulate, because the reversal of body flow has been eliminated. So we've eliminated one problem and added a different problem. We've eliminated the reversal of body flow, but we've added the problem of standing around doing nothing for 2 seconds before the next call. Other comments on this? Okay. Moving on to Dixie Grand. I'm not going to repeat everything that was said 2 months ago here on this, but I want to give you formulas. There were numerous places shown 2 months ago where Dixie Grand can be used, and they were all wonderful. They all are perfect. But I want to give you the formula so that you can sight call Dixie Grand, and you can sight call it very easily. Very easily. Now, first of all, let me mention, I remember from 2 months ago, Clark made a comment on Dixie Grand, and he said, I like Dixie Grand, it dances nice. He underplayed it. In my opinion, he underplayed it significantly. I love Dixie Grand. I drool over Dixie Grand. I want numerous Dixie Grands in my choreography. Why? Because it's forward, ongoing motion. The dancers love it. Everybody that dances Dixie Grand loves it, and they don't get to dance it very much. Why? Because the majority of callers, I think, are afraid of it because they don't know the formula. So they'll have written down one sequence that has a Dixie Grand in it. They'll read it, they'll call it during their dance, say, fine, now I've done my Dixie Grand duty for the night, and now I can move on. I maintain you should have at least 10 Dixie Grands in your calling every night. The dancers just love it because it's forward, ongoing motion. There's a neat little thing you can do with Dixie Grand that the dancers love. You know, when the caller calls Dixie Grand, he'll usually then directionalize it just to be able to say something with the music. He'll say Dixie Grand, right, Alaman, left. If you tell your dancers to shout out loud, right, left, right, at the same time the caller is saying it, this is a big fun thing for the dancers, and the dancers love it. They're looking forward to it. When can we shout again? Everybody I've shown this to, they immediately fall in with this. And so that makes it even more fun for the dancers because it's forward motion and they're having fun because they're calling Dixie Grand right along with the caller. You two can be an instant caller. So let's go with the formulas for Dixie Grand. Number one, from a starting double pass through position. And I always use the word starting. Caller Lab has the two terms, double pass through and completed double pass through. And I've always said that Caller Lab should have the word starting in there for that formation, because when you say the words double pass through formation, you mentally think that the dancers are in the completed part because that implies an action. So I'm always going to say starting double pass through and completed double pass through, and that way there's no chance for anybody to misinterpret what we're doing. So from a starting double pass through position, here is the key setup. Primary couple in the center, secondary girl behind, nut with partner. That's the key setup. Primary couple in the center, secondary girl behind, nut with partner. And you call Dixie Grand. Now, 1A, this is saying the same thing in a slightly different way. From a starting double pass through formation, secondary girl in the middle, primary man behind, nut with partner. Secondary girl in the middle, primary man behind, nut with partner. And you call Dixie Grand. The second setup, and I don't know that we have to. I mean, you have to throw in the numbers, I guess. But we don't necessarily have to do that. Or if you want to have them be dancing Dixie Grand while I'm giving the formulas, but I think everybody's got the Dixie Grand idea. The second setup. So we had our first setup, starting double pass through position, primary couple in the middle, secondary girl behind nut with partner, or secondary couple in the middle, primary man behind nut with partner. Starting position number 2. From a starting double pass through, anytime the centers can pass through Alaman left, and we have that all the time. Module callers are using that all the time. Anytime the centers can pass, go ahead and throw in the numbers there, Don. So centers do a right and left through. So anytime the centers can pass through Alaman left, instead call double pass through Dixie Grand. Now that means the Dixie Grand is starting from a completed double pass through position. So the first time you'll have to explain this to the dancers. We're going to do a Dixie Grand. Now the leaders will start and everybody will finish. And once you've done it once, they'll have it for the rest of the night. Double pass through, leaders start Dixie Grand, and you do it. Number 3. And we know this from the seminar 2 weeks ago, from a corner box, it's pass through Dixie Grand. Or from a corner box, slide through, square through 4 Dixie Grand. Now that makes 7 hands and may not necessarily be the best. Clark said he didn't like that particularly. I tend not to use that. I do this as a pass through Dixie Grand. These are the ones for you to memorize. Memorize these, because then you'll be able to use Dixie Grand any place you are. Let me pause. Any questions on those formulas? I think they're pretty basic. Any comments on those formulas? If you memorize those formulas, you're going to be instantly able to call Dixie Grand. And I would say write them down, have them on the sheet of paper in front of you when you're calling a dancer a couple of times. And once you've done it a couple of times, you'll have it memorized. What was I going to say? Oh, okay. So let's get them in facing lines and put all the numbers in.
I guess the numbers don't show very well with the gray.
Well, you weren't using gray before. Yeah, okay. And get them with their partners.
How do you do that? The easiest way is to go home and make a line. With partners in sequence. Go ahead.
All right. The beauty of having these formulas. Remember I said, I love Dixie Grand. I want to use it like 10 times a night. You can set up Dixie Grand. Let me say it this way. You are never more than 15 seconds away from a Dixie Grand get out. You don't have to wait in your calling until your faces are aligned in the previous setups that I had. You can force it at any time very simply, because a Dixie Grand setup means one couple with their partner and one without. Either the primary or for the whole square, 2 couples with, 2 couples without. It can be either the primary couple or the secondary couple, because we have a formula for both. So let's say I've been going along and I've called the first 3 tips of the night, and I said, gee, I haven't called the Dixie Grand yet. I want to call a Dixie Grand get out. And I'm in facing lines, everybody has their partner. But I know that to do a Dixie Grand get out, I have to have 2 people without their partner. And the way you do that you call AC-DC. Either call it, if you're calling plus, or call it directional and circulate center straight, and circulate center straight if you're calling mainstream. So past the ocean, AC-DC. And now we have our 2 couples with and 2 couples without. Do you see from here that I am only 2 calls away from calling a Dixie Grand? Based on the formula that I gave you before. The formula that I gave you before, it was subsection A under number 1, was secondary couple in the middle, primary man behind, nut with partner. Do you see the 2 calls that you can call that will give you that? It's explode the wave and wheel and deal. So go ahead, explode the wave. Wheel and deal. And there's our formula, secondary in the middle, primary man behind, nut with partner. And we don't have to do the Dixie Grand because we know it works from the formula. So do you see that you are never very far from a Dixie Grand at any point in your calling? Let's try another example. Centers, pass through, and star through. All right. I now decide I want to call I want to use a Dixie Grand get out. And I want to use this fast. I want to get there fast. I don't want to mess around. So let's pass the ocean and the girls trade, which we all agree we should go after that. And lo and behold, I have matched couples, 1 couple matched, 1 couple mismatched. So what do it's the exact same thing I had before. I didn't plan it that way, but you see it. If I did explode the wave, wheel and deal, I can call my Dixie Grand. That's how you can sight call Dixie Grand, and that you're never more than 15 seconds away from a Dixie Grand get out. You can force the square to a Dixie Grand get out, because if you don't have 2 couples, if you have everybody with partner, you call an AC-DC. If you have mixed faces all over the square, you just move those faces and you're going to be very close to the Dixie Grand. Comments on this? Now, I'll throw in another comment too. If you took notes 2 months ago on the Dixie Grand, and Don was showing, he had facing lines with the boys in the middle and the girls on the end. And I don't remember what the numbers were, but he said slide through, and which gave you a magic column. And then you could call the Dixie Grand based on the configuration of the numbers he had. And he rightfully threw in the comment that you have to watch out because not everybody can do a same-sex slide through, which I agree with. So I would never roll the dice and call a same-sex slide through. Instead, I would call, and you had same-sex, and your setup was like boys and middle, girls on the end. Do a pass and wheel and deal and spread. Okay, so don't do this yet. He called everybody slide through, which had the boys' right hand, gives the boys' right hands, girls' left hands. That gave you the magic column. And by virtue of where he had the numbers, he then could call those who can start a Dixie Grand. But you're rolling the dice because not everybody can do a facing couples, or I mean, a same-sex slide through. I would never gamble. I always assume the dancers don't know much. And I'm never gonna roll the dice. If I have a neat get out, I'm not gonna roll the dice and hope the dancers can do a toughie thing to get to my neat get out, because if they break down, they'll never see my neat get out. So from here, all this has led up to the fact that from here, instead of calling slide through, I would say touch a quarter, which everybody would do. And then I would say girls turn back. That gives me my magic column without having to do the same sex slide through. So if you had notes on that from the last time, consider doing that to get this magic column. And if you weren't here the last time, magic column, that's a C1 term. You don't have to remember that term. That's just this setup where some in a column where the centers have one hand and the outsides have another hand. All right, that's enough for the Dixie Grand. On my Dixie Grand handout, I have a whole slew of other Dixie Grand setups that I say don't memorize, just have laying on a sheet of paper down on your table beside you, and you're going along, you want a neat Dixie Grand get out, you set up, you just glance down and pick one. And you don't want to try to memorize too much or it all blends into a big bowl of soup. So any thoughts here on Dixie Grand? Oh, I know. I did want to show this. Go ahead, but the comment. Go ahead with the comment.
I will see to it that Dan gets a copy of your handout, either off the Color Lab knowledge base or scanning in the hard copy you sent me, and Dan will put it up in the notes so anybody can get it. Yeah, I guess what with the YouTube with the video, is that where you put it, Dan?
Yeah, I either put it in the comments or in the description of the video, depending on how long things end up being. And I think Mel is ahead of you already.
Oh, he's put it in the chat.
Well, that I have a long email from Mel with a lot of resources and notes from this. So yes.
Great. Mel is very good at that.
All I did was provide the link to the Color Lab knowledge base with your handouts on it. And I typed out the value of centers trade from what you were speaking. I sent you a copy as well, because you're right. That's not written down anywhere and it should be.
You are so good. I am so impressed. I'm lucky to turn the computer on and you can do all this stuff. Don, I'll mention the copy I sent you might not copy well because it's on that orange paper. And that sometimes doesn't give a good physical copy. Heads pair off, make a wave. All right, from here, another get out, and don't do the dancers with that. If the boys circulate, it's going to be a Dixie Grand get out. See, because when boy 1 gets to girl 3, so girl 3 will be the first hand pull by, it's 3, 2, 1, and then there's the Alaman left. So from a corner box ocean wave, if the ends circulate, it's a Dixie Grand. If you have a corner box, it isn't the best choreography to say step to a wave and then do the next call. It's what I call kerplunk calling. Step to a wave, kerplunk, do the next call, bonk. Rather, we should dance them to the wave. And so what I like to do is unpair off. Yeah, right there. So if you're, okay, you do a pair off. We know that relay the deucey is a 0. So from here, we call relay the deucey, we're going to finish in an ocean wave. So we have that as knowledge. If we also remember the knowledge that from a corner box ocean wave, which is what we're going to have when we're done the relay the deucey, if the boys circulate, then we can call a Dixie Grand. So if we combine these two sets of knowledge, what we can do is call relay the deucey, and we're watching the number 1 man. And when he is about 2 steps before he touches girl 4 to complete the call, we then say, boys circulate Dixie Grand. The whole thing dances like a charm. It's just wonderful. The dancers will ooh and ah, and you may get a raise. And go ahead, start the relay the Deucey. Run them through a relay the Deucey.
I thought I did. All right.
And when I say voice circulate, I'm going to raise the volume of my voice because I don't want them to think this is part of relay the Deucey. I want to propel that number one. I want to propel the boys into the circulate. So we're waiting for the relay the Deucey. So I'm watching boy one. Boy one's going along. And here he comes, the girl. Boys circulate once, Dixie Grand, because the dancer do it fast contaminations. Boys circulate, Dixie Grand, and it dances beautifully. You have to raise the volume of your voice to get this to sell. It's a presentation technique. You raise the volume of your voice to get the dancers to do something they're not thinking about that they're going to do. You raise the volume of your voice, say, boys circulate, Dixie Grand, and it's just a winner. It's a nice opener if you want. Again, of course, this is plus. It's a nice opener. Head square through 4. Relay the Deucey. Watch number 1, boys. Boys circulate once, Dixie Grand. All right, that ends our Dixie Grand.
Let me throw in a couple of comments here, Ed.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll have to double check this and let Brad know, but it didn't seem to do relay the Deucey from an 8-chain through formation. I had to have him step to a wave first. It's a contaminations problem.
That's a contaminations thing.
Yeah, and I just thought I'd remember that and let Brad know about it because he's good at correcting things like that. A personal gripe I have, you didn't like step to a wave and then do something. Why do so many callers, both in patter that I hear online and singing calls, do a head square through, do-si-do, step to a wave and swing through? Why do they say step to a wave? Why don't they just say the swing through after the do-si-do? Personal gripe, thought I'd throw that in.
Well, I agree completely. I've always said do-si-do should never be called. It's a direct reversal of body flow twice. It's a double reversal of body flow. There's a basic rule of thumb: the more do-si-dos in your dance, the less smooth it is. And in a singing call, if you do-si-do before every figure, do-si-do the corner and then swing through and meet your right left grand, meet your partner, do-si-do and promenade home. We're doing 7 do-si-dos in each singing call. You do 7 singing calls a night. You throw in a few do-si-dos in your patter. You have 50 to 55 double reversals of body flow throughout the night. No wonder people's dances aren't smooth.
I have another thing I will never, I think I've given up calling either weave the ring or right and left through to a do-si-do swing and promenade, or do-si-do and promenade, because the dancers are going to do a weave the ring and swing and promenade, so I just call swing so they don't do it incorrectly. But just
I'm always disappointed when I hear big name callers who can sing like a bird, sing far better than I ever could, and they're throwing in do-si-do because they know the dancers don't have to think about it and can listen to them sing. I really want no do-si-dos at all. Now, granted, go ahead and call do-si-do once a night because it's a traditional call. It'll always be with us. So go ahead, do your do-si-do duty and call it one. In fact, I intentionally call it once a night to see how many dancers are going to swing instead of doing it correctly when I'm a guest caller. And if they do it correctly, I go down and congratulate them between the tip. But the more do-si-dos in your dance, the less smooth it is. The more step to a wave and do something, the less smooth it is. It's just head square through 4 and swing through. Any graduated dancer can do that. We don't have to baby them by say step to a wave and then swing. Just awful, just awful.
Since we're past the hour, I'm going to throw in a little story that I always remember. But at a Frank Lane Caller School, he was telling us that when you were in a position to do a pass through to to an Alaman left to a corner box from a starting double pass through. Frank would call do-si-do once and a half, Alaman left.
Yeah, geez.
And some dancer came up to him afterwards and said, I noticed that I wasn't facing my corner after that do-si-do once and a half. And Frank said, I noticed the way you did the do-si-do, you really weren't facing the corner. Blaming the dancer, or trying to point out to them that a swing do-si-do is not a do-si-do. Anyway, small story.
And here's another thing. Why did the dancers swing on do-si-do? Is it because, well, I'm going to show that no good caller that he's not going to boss me around. I'm going to do it on my own? No, the dancers inherently recognize that do-si-do is not a smooth call. Their stomach feels it. So they do the swing in order to smooth it out.
Interesting. Go ahead, carry on, or any other comment?
The final thing here is sophisticated sight resolves. Here is where we're going to take all the knowledge we have and we're going to resolve. I have always maintained that a good sight caller can resolve in 15 seconds or less from any place on the floor. And I said that for years. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, Ken Bertucci was here and calling in our hall, and we decided to test out this theory. Is my theory right that you should be able to get to a left Alaman in 15 seconds at any time somebody snaps their fingers? So he had a couple callers in the group that he was calling for. So these callers, Ken and I both went out of the hall. We went outside the house. And these callers set the dancers up in, in a square, however they wanted to set them up. Nothing asymmetrical, just normal stuff. Then Ken would come in, have his head down. They would say, look up. He would look up and immediately have to go. And then I would come in, follow him, head down, look up and go. And we had two objectives here. One, who is a better sight caller? And two, was my theory correct? Well, we did this 6 times and we tied. I won 3, he won 3. But we also determined that the 15-second rule doesn't necessarily apply if the square is in sort of a weird position. If you have 3-in-1 lines, or maybe if you're in diamonds or facing diamonds or whatever, we determined that if the square is a little convoluted, it may take 25. So now I say 25 is the maximum and aim for 15. And if we're talking just normal resolves and not doing any sort of sophisticated choreography, you always should be able to get it in 15 seconds. So what we want to do now, different callers ask me at different times, how does your mind work? They may be asking this for a couple different reasons, but they want to know what my thought process is when I'm going for a resolve. So we're going to do 2 of these. I'm going to do 2 resolves, taking whatever's there. I'm going to let Don just move the people around however he wants to. And I'm going to do my resolve, but I'm going to tell you what my thought process is as I do it. Now, I'm not going to be able to do it in 15 seconds because we're going to be waiting for the dancers. So it'll be a combination of, if I see it, I'll just bypass the dancers and go sailing on. But if I need to look at the dancers, then I'm going to have to wait for the dancers. So we may not get the 15-second rule. So go ahead, Don, and just mix them up.
You mean I got to do that?
You can make the first one, since we have newer callers here, make the first one relatively easy, I guess.
I get a head square through 2. I'm going to do a centers in and centers run. Yeah, let's do it past the ocean. Okay. Go for it, Ed.
All right. First thing I see that boy one is close to his partner. So I'm going to call boys trade, boys run, Ferris wheel. I have my Dixie Grand set up right there because I got the primary couple in the middle, secondary girl on the outside. So it was 3 calls to get out. And that would have taken 10 seconds.
Whoops.
You're done.
Boys.
You forgot the trade, Don.
Yeah. Boys.
Boys trade, boys run,
Boys run. Ferris
Ferris
wheel.
wheel. So what I was looking to normalize, but at the same time I was looking, is anybody close to being matched? I saw primary was close to being matched, so that was nice and convenient. So I matched them. And while I was calling the boys run around his original partner, I was looking to see where is secondary girl. And once I saw her, I had a 2-phase line. I could have done a normal 2-phase line resolve. That would have taken too long. So once I saw that the secondary girl was over in the other 2-phase line, I knew I had a Ferris wheel and Dixie Grand because I knew the secondary girl was not with her partner. So Don was nice. He gave me a nice, easy one. So go ahead. But that was my thought process.
The other thing I noticed when you had the, after you did the boys run, was that if you had done the couple circulate Ferris wheel, you would have been heading very close to a at-home resolve.
Right, right. Yeah, I could have done a Ferris wheel zoom and the center square through 2 part of trade and it would have been at home.
I think the principle of this wasn't the at-home resolve. It's
Right.
You can get to that element left very quickly.
You read my mind again, Mel. I am just.
Oh, sorry.
You were in this space capsule. It's so cool.
So he did centers trade,
Centers run.
centers run. Tell me your thinking at each point again. We were here.
My thinking is I want to get normal couples. The simplest way to get normal couples is boys run. But I saw that if I had the boys trade before the boys run, it just speeded up the process to get primary couple together.
Okay.
You used the centers trade.
What's that?
And you used the centers trade.
No, but that didn't apply here because there was no previous call.
No, after the pass the ocean, I mean.
Had he done a pass the ocean there?
Yeah, centers in, centers run. He called it pass the ocean. You used your centers trade example as well.
Okay. Yeah, I did that intentionally.
2 for 1. 1 second, Daryl.
Now here's,
let's just
let me
finish
throw
this.
this in. I'm gonna.
Daryl, what were you going to say?
I can understand. Am I muted? Oh, okay. What about mainstream? All of this, so much of what you've been doing here, I like the Dixie Grand. I like what you've been doing, but it's done on the assumption that everybody in the world does nothing but plus and above.
Right. If I was doing mainstream here, I would have called Ferris. I would have done the exact same thing. And instead of calling Dixie Grand, I would have called Zoom and square through 3.
Thank you very much for that.
Now let me show you this. Boys run. See if I can set.
So this is where we did the Dixie Grand, and we're going to do a Zoom.
And a square through 3.
Center square through 3.
Or center square through 2 and part of trade because we know that's a at-home result.
Yeah.
All right, swing through. Boys run. How the heck did I have this? Girls trade. Well, I'm not seeing what I was. Boys circulate. Couples trade. girls trade. This was all to set you up for this is a memorized get out that really works neat. Girls trade again, trade to girls again. So you might want to write this down because it's a precise pre-set up thing, but it's easy to set up. And the setup is two-face lines, everybody with partner, everybody in sequence, and the primary couple is the lead couple. That's the easy way to set it up. Now the get out is, and I can use this get out at mainstream or plus. The get out actually comes from advanced, but I don't use advanced terms. So here is our get out from our established set. Girls trade. Now and don't move the checkers through this. Advanced callers, you will see that if I call a turn and deal, it's a right and left grand. And that's the premise for my get out at mainstream and plus. At mainstream and plus, I'm going to call it directionally. But the key is that I have perfect presentation, because if it isn't presented in perfect timing, it's going to fall off the table. So listen to me say it first, then you can move it on the checkers. I'm going to say it like a military basis. Half tag, face right and left grand. And they'll do it. So as I'm cruising along, I think to myself, I have a turn and deal get out, but since I'm calling mainstream, I can't say those words, so I'll directionally call it. And then there's another place. Where the heck is this other place? There's a variation of this that's let's have the
I just want to repeat what you just did. So it was, we have right hand two face lines, everybody with partner, everybody in sequence.
In sequence, it's girls trade, half tag, face right and left grand.
Okay. I did a turn deal. Sorry, makes it easier.
Yeah. And the other one, I couldn't think of it offhand. I'm going to move my checkers to see if I can come up with it, but I don't want to waste your time while I'm doing this. So go ahead. So that was one get out where I showed you my thought process. So let's do another one. Set them up into more of a weird thing. And
could I interject one before you move on, Ed? Yeah. Partner lines in sequence. Star through, circle 4 halfway, veer left, half tag, face right. I think that'll get you your mainstream and quite possibly your basic.
Okay, go ahead and do that, Don.
So partner lines in sequence.
Star through, circle 4 halfway.
Does terminations do that? Sure.
Before left halfway.
Or you could do a right and left through, veer left. I prefer circle 4 half, veer left.
Yeah, let's do a right and left through. Veer left.
Half tag. Face right.
Which is the same half tag, face right.
Yeah, you're set for the right and left grand, are you not?
Right. You got them there. without doing the center's trade. You took it a step further in your setup for it.
Yeah, to me, it's a simple setup because the newer callers are going to be very, very familiar with the partner lines in sequence. It's just a simple star through, right and left through, veer left, half tag. They're again quite quick and easy to recognize.
Your center's trade is replaced by the star through veer left. Excellent. Excellent.
Ed, you wanted
it might not be as smooth, but it could be as unexpected as instead of face right, face left, doing Hellman left.
I'm going to show you another get out here. It requires a specific setup. And I'm just going to show you this because it's neat. The dancers like it. And if you like it, you can go ahead and use it. How the heck do I want to do this? Oh, head star through, California twirl. And hit and veer left. This is a setup for this get out. It's a neat get out. I don't even always remember it. I may try to set it up and mess it up when I'm calling, and that's fine. I just recognize I messed it up. This is the setup. So write down this, what it is: secondary two face lines in sequence, and the secondary couple is the trailing couple, and the primary man is in the same line with the secondary couple. This is a setup. I'll show you the get out, and then I'll show you what happens when I'm flying along a mile a minute and may not be able to recognize this. So from right here, it's the same idea as before, but I add another military command. So I get 3 commands, and the dancers just seem to eat it up. What it is for advanced dancers, it's a turn and deal and pass through right and left grand. For mainstream, I'll say half tag, face right, pass through, right and left grand. See, I'm giving them marching, 1, 2, 3, and the dancers are dancing just like that, and they, boom, they're at the right and left grand, and they love it. It really, half tag, face right, pass through, right and left grand. Now go back to the starting thing there again. Okay. Now, I know that this get out happens when I have a matched couple and a mismatched couple. But I don't always remember, it's too much mental effort for me to remember this exact configuration of secondary couple has got to be the trailing one and the primary man has to be the lead one. So if I want to do this get out and I have a 2-face line, and it's in sequence, I'll go ahead and call it. And if it's not going to work, I bail out. Because I don't have time to pause in my calling to see, are they all in the right place? I'd have to stop the whole calling and just stop and look at that. So what I'll do, because the get out I think is so neat, I'll just start to call it. And then if I see it's not going to work, I bail out. So let's do a couple circulate. All right, so let's say, yeah, I'm gonna try my half tag, face right, pass right. I'm gonna try it from here. Half tag, face right.
All right, let me undo what I just did here. Okay, half tag, face right.
And I see it's not gonna work, so I just bail out. I call star through, girls trade, bend the line, and I just continue on. But I like to get out so much, I'm willing to gamble that I've thought of it the right way. And so you can decide whether you like that or not, but it's 3 military call, and you got to say it perfect. You got to say it just like they're marching. Half tag, face right, pass through, right and left grain. You can't say half tag, pause, face right, pause. It just loses the whole impact if you do it that way.
For the callers, excuse me, that are more like Daryl, I would, as a shortcut to get there, not necessarily have to do it this way, but if you have head star through, pass through, you've got that across the street box, right?
Right.
Okay, circle 4 halfway, veer left, couple circulate. That'll give you your setup position there, half tag, face right, pass to the right and left grand.
Good, very good. Remember what Daryl said. Start with an across the street box. I mean, it'd be neat as an opener. Do this as an opener. Start with an across the street box, have the head square through 2, and then swing through. Boys run, couple circulate, half tag, face right, pass through, right, left grand.
All of these things
That's why Daryl made the big bucks all his life, because he stuff.
Ed, what came to mind when I saw this setup originally is something you were giving us earlier, but it was a veer right to a Dixie Grand.
The thing that I noticed about these, and it is just a general idea for site resolving anything, but a lot of these gimmicks happen to be based on one particular thing, and that's being able to recognize basically the heads pair off situation, because all of these so far they're basically heads pair off and veer left, which is the other thing. So if you're sort of learning to sort of snapshot things to recognize formations that you're in visually, the heads pair off situation is a big one, and these turn and deal ones we've been doing are, pair off and veer left. So the veer left variation on that is another. Those are good formations to be able to see good good setups to be able to see.
So we were still on our doing an example. Set up another example where I'll resolve it and I'll explain my thought process and make it more difficult than the first one.
Okay, so you go on the other behind the curtain. And
yes.
Dan, give me a call.
But no asymmetric.
Dan, they won't do it. 10 days.
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot.
Any call.
Heads past the ocean. Oh, I shouldn't have done. Oh, well.
Hannah, give me a call. Ah, jeez. I type. Come on. Hannah, give me a call from here.
Swing through.
Senators swing through.
Yes.
Mel.
Boys pass through.
What?
Boys pass through.
Joe, give me a call.
That's pretty bad right there.
I like that one. Give it to me.
What did you say?
So the first thing.
Wait, I was going to have Joe give us one more call here.
Oh, okay. Center's half tag. There you go.
Oh, well, now it makes it easy.
We love you, Ed.
Ed, you want to go from here? Think out loud.
Yeah, what I would do, thing that comes immediately to mind, center's walk and dodge, the outside boy turn back.
They're all outside boys. Head boy.
No, while the centers are walking and dodging, the outside boy turn back.
Yeah. Whoops. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Oh, I did it right. Head boy. You turn back. Okay.
And now it's one call is to get out to a left out man. Centers face out, centers face the nearest outside person, however you want to say it, pass the out man left.
Swing the nearest person and promenade.
Yeah.
But
what
I want is centers cloverleaf to an Alaman left for that matter.
What's that?
Centers run Alaman left.
Yeah, centers run, centers cloverleaf, centers do all sorts of things.
If you wanted to play around in a gimmicky sort of way, having done that one boy face out, you could do a couple combinations of, that boy face in, the others face in, everybody face out, everybody partner trade, everybody face in, being silly in that way. But basically, I mean, your partner's right there. So,
like
whatever it takes and then swing.
So this is where we were, huh? No, we were back one more.
In other words, my thought process is I'm looking to get normal, but I'm also looking at faces at the same time. So by having the outside boy turn back, they got normal, and the setters, I wanted to get them out of their box thing. So I had them walk and dodge, and if the outsides had been in a different place, I could have had the centers cloverleaf, whatever.
Boys go right, girls go straight. Everybody swing.
What? From here?
No, back up the split circulate. Yeah. Boys go right, girls go straight.
You're not going to call split circulated mainstreamer plus.
No, I know. Why not?
If you say boys, from here, you're going to say boys go right.
Yeah, girls go straight.
But the boys are going to crash into each other.
No,
they're not.
You say all the boys go right.
Yeah, all the boys go right, girls go straight. Find your partner, swing.
Ah, you get back there. All the boys go right. Boy number one is turning to his right. He's going to crash into boy four.
Yeah, but boy four is going right as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah, det är klart. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, it's just that's just the directional. Boys go right, girls go straight. There's your partner swing. Yeah, there's hundreds of little gimmicky little get outs you can do from that setup.
Yeah.
This is my favorite get out from anywhere, but even broken squares, but I don't think Tamination knows it.
All right, so that sophisticated sight resolve in which we're taking all the knowledge we have gained over these different methods plus whatever, and just taking whatever is there and trying to get there as fast as possible. Does anybody else, we have a lot of experienced callers here, anybody else have thoughts on this? My way could easily not have been the best way. Does anybody else have thoughts on this resolving method where you take whatever's there and you just go for it?
Not so much a different method or anything else, but a comment. What I really, really appreciate about this is you set up a very simple one couple paired, one couple not, and you can use that to plug into just about any kind of get out that you're approaching, be it the Dixie Grand, be it the half tag and roll, or sorry, half tag face right and left grand. Setting that up gives you something, as Chris Stacy was saying, that you can recognize easy and add to your repertoire with 2 or 3 little formulas that with practice, they become a mood enhancer to increase your own choreographic flow and your sequencing for that surprise. And they are simple, easy, and easy to plug in. And with use, they become part of your repertoire. So that's where I see the power of it.
And let me ask, for those original 6 callers at the start that raised their hand that were new, what comments or questions do you have on this? Yeah. Don raised his hand. I was thinking he was a new caller.
I was raising my hand saying that was a good question to ask. Let's hear from somebody we haven't yet.
And I recognize you may not know what you may say, I had a question. I don't know what question to ask. But, and granted, this second half has been fairly sophisticated. But I want to make sure we answer anything you have, any question you may have, or how you proceed, because we don't want you to get lost on the square dancing. Square dance calling requires more decisions to be made in a shorter space of time than any other job on this planet. And so it takes work. Maybe they're overwhelmed.
No, Yolanda's about to
No.
speak.
Yes. I like the ending where we were going back to mainstream, because that's the level that of my dancers at the moment. The plus is going to end up going into my library, and when I can call for a plus again, I will use it. I've learned more about timing and using different voices. I'm gonna have to go back on my tape and catch up on a couple of things
No,
when it was going a little fast. But yeah, I mean, part of it was a little higher than what I need right now.
Are you
But I've
cycling
learned
now?
to go back. You know, there's stuff that I didn't understand a year ago that I now, when I go back to it, makes sense. So
Are you cycling now?
No, well, sorta, a little bit,
So
but
what
not
method are you using?
modules. Yeah.
All right, so that's module calling, so that's fine. So you haven't started site calling yet.
Oh, Yolanda, I think he said, what method of site resolving do you use?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Modules, okay. And you've been
Yeah,
calling how long?
I've basically been doing patter on Zoom and singing calls before COVID. So
And we'll keep working on your the more module work you do, the more you're going to lay a strong foundation for when you get to site calling.
and I have all this information to go back to now.
Any other of the newer callers?
I think they're basically gone.
Oh.
Steve's still here.
Well, Steve's still here.
Well, their images are still here anyway.
Yeah.
I was able to follow most of it, but it's still not. I'm not to that level yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to see how it worked.
Have you started site calling yet?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I like learning about the center's trade part, the flow of that. That makes more sense now.
And the key with that is put that in your library and don't think about it for a year. Because if you try to incorporate that now, it's going to mess up your modules. It's going to mess up your mind when you start the site calling. That's sophisticated down the road stuff. So don't feel that you're expected to be doing that now.
Yeah, but I have access to some experienced callers, and it's like, okay, how can we incorporate this into one or two of my modules?
Well, yeah, you can show them the notes or show them the presentation, but don't force yourself to get into that at this point.
Yolanda, did you say experienced callers or did you mean experienced dancers?
Callers, so that I can help build the choreography.
Okay.
You know, that like when there's one or two people I'm playing checkers with online. So, you know, so I'm sort of site calling with my checkers with other callers. That's about as close to site call as I'm getting.
It's good practice for the mind, even if it's not at real time right now.
Yeah.
Any other? Clark.
Can you throw up Taminations again for a second?
Yes, I can. Yes, I did.
And make it so that as we're looking out as a caller, we have ocean waves running left to right. Like sides, pair off, step to a wave, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Any way you want, any kind of right-hand wave.
Clark, are you coming to Color Lab?
No, I hear there's COVID.
Oh, jeez.
So one thing that's been happening throughout this discussion, and it also happens with any discussion of site calling and resolving, is what can you look out at the square and recognize? I happen to have ocean waves. Actually, why don't we get two-face lines? Just have centers run or something. So a bunch of the places Ed was looking for and was describing is, oh, two-face lines with our primary couple looking out and his corners in the line or not in the line. And that kind of gets down to a question. This is more of a mathematical question, is how many different two-face lines that look like this, not, and the genders can be anywhere, can we actually have? And without making you guys think and answer it, I'm going to say that there's 384 different ones. Because if Don points to the bottom left position, there's 8 dancers we could stick there. And once we stick a dancer there, his diagonal opposite is fixed. And then the next place over to the right is 6 people who are left to place there. And his diagonal opposite fills that other position. And then the next place is 4, and the next place is 2. And if we multiply 8 times 6 times 4 times 2, we end up with 384 different right-hand two-face lines that you might encounter and have to resolve. However, when we stick that first dancer in the bottom left corner, we know that we're sticking let's say we stick a lady in there. It doesn't really matter for our resolving purposes, whether it's number 1 lady, number 2 lady, number 3 lady, or number 4 lady. So we can divide that big number 384 by 4, and that gives us 96. So if you gave me a way to resolve where we are right now, you know, be it turn in deal right and left grand or Ferris wheel square through 3, whatever the resolve is, you need to have a table if you want to know all of the different ways out from any possible right-hand two-face line. There's 96 different resolves that you need. And a long time ago, I wrote a program that would compute and find all those and publish those. And those resolve tables basically had 96 different resolves for the 96 different positions from right-hand two-face lines. Now, the ones that Ed knows and that Ed sees, he might only have 4 or 8 or 12 of those different, that as you're calling, you're like, oh, good, I'm in one of those. So there's many more that you don't ever do, usually where the genders are in weird positions. If it's boy, boy, girl, girl, you know, two-face lines, we may not care as much about that. So just wanted to say that.
But why do we need to know the 96 if we can resolve from any two-face line in like with 12? Why do we need the 96? If we can resolve site calling wise, not mathematical wise, but just site calling wise.
No, you're right. Site calling wise, you only need to know a few, the ones you can see or the ones you can maneuver someone into and then see. That's
right.
Correct.
So therefore, why do we need to worry about the 96?
If I wanted to sell you a table where you just look it up because you're writing material and want a clever get out, no matter where you are in your right-hand two-face lines, that table would have 96 entries.
I used to actually use your tables when I was writing material back in the early 80s.
Oh, I use it a lot. And the thing that got me with the tables was in some of the setups, the get outs were very blasé, especially
yeah, they could be bad flow or they could be boring. And that's because they were all computer generated. It was just for every different dance program, it showed you 5 different ways out. Right.
They were definitely boarding for mainstream and plus.
Yeah.
They were better once you got to the challenge.
Yeah. If you hit challenge, you get this tag chain through cross reactivate right and left grand. And you're like, no one would have ever seen that. Right. But I agree at mainstream and plus it didn't, they weren't snappy get outs in any
I
means.
still have those tables. Are they worth anything on Roadshow America or
I don't know.
You see what I have here? These are the tables.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
just
pretty
pulled them
funny.
out of the. I just pulled them out of the recycle bin. I'm trying to get rid of things that I don't need anymore.
Oh,
I just put them in there maybe yesterday or the day
That's
before.
pretty funny.
I would say, don't throw things like that away, but we have computers now, so I'm sure they're scanned in somewhere or otherwise digitally preserved.
Yeah. I don't own them anymore because my basement got moldy and everything got thrown out.
Oh, wow.
Well, I can retrieve these if somebody wants
No,
them.
not me.
Well, make sure somebody somewhere scans them in so that it isn't gratuitously lost. Because someday, 100 years from now, people will say, "Oh, back in the old days, we had paper, and look at this."
If Clark is okay with it copyright wise, I will happily
Yeah,
scan
sure.
them and
I
put
don't
them on
care.
Alamand Left.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Don, put that in the first of the stack to send to me. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I'll have to make sure I get the right ones out of the recycled bin.
If you're missing any, Don, I have the whole set.
Say that. What was that?
I have the whole set.
Who's talking?
That's
Ed.
Ed.
Oh, it's Ed.
So if you find you're missing some stuff, I have the whole set.
I probably have it. It might even be easier, Dan, for me to scan them in and send it to you.
Yeah, the only way I would have to physically send postal mail.
Well, that's what he was saying to you. Ed, do you want to send those directly to Dan? Dan, do you want?
Would it be easier? Would it be easier if you scanned them in to Dan? Because then Dan's going to have to scan them in.
Well, the thing is, I was about to physically mail Dan a few things under media rate. It's not too expensive, so.
Well, why don't you go ahead and just include the tables with the stuff you're going to mail them?
Okay.
I do have a sheet fed scanner, so it helps.
I do too, but unfortunately, it's not a two-sided scanner, so it ends up being non-correlated correctly. It'll do all one side, flip it over all the other side, and then mesh them. And it's the meshing that.
Well, mine will do too, and I can do computer magic for meshing. So
yeah.
I will happily scan those.
Dan, where are you located?
I am in Petaluma, California, which is about 45 minutes north of San Francisco.
Okay, yeah, I know where it is.
Yeah. It's if you want it in terms of callers you might have heard of, I'm about 25 miles north of Eric Hennerlau and additional distance south of Steve Minkin and Lawrence Johnstone.
Okay. Well, I think that's about everything I have on what I know you said you tended to keep going indefinitely, so I'm willing to keep going.
I try to get out after an hour and a half or two, but as usual, things tend to continue anyway. But the silence might be a good place to. What are we showing, Yolanda?
We're down to 13.
Remember we were talking about Jay King?
That's Jay's book, yeah.
Yes.
That's one that I think I'm not quite willing to get rid of yet. I can't remember.
I did have one question, Don.
Yes.
Caller Lab convention is coming up very shortly.
Yes.
Are you doing a session that weekend?
Ooh, probably not. I hadn't specifically thought of it, but yeah. I'm going to have to make sure I don't schedule somebody for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind that.
That's Saturday the 9th.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to call it this year. I'm breaking a 45-year sequence, but for some reason it's Clark. So And I'm just curious, are you going to be living in the hotel or at home?
Who?
Ed.
Oh, I'm going to be at the hotel.
Okay. It's more fun that way, but it's more.
Well, there's so many things going on. I'm starting there Saturday night through Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, say hello to people for me. Send my regrets. Anything else, or shall we call it a week? A strong week.
I have some notes to coordinate for the next time I'm calling plus, so which will be in 2 weeks, I think. When everybody else is off at Color Lab, I'll be filling in here. So
when did you say Color Lab is? I'm opening my spreadsheet to make sure I don't have anybody scheduled for that.
Week of the 9th.
Saturday the 9th is Color Lab starts on Monday the 11th.
Okay. Yeah. No,
there's stuff going on starting Friday night, the 8th, and continuing.
I'm just going to have to stick that in my spreadsheet so it doesn't. I don't hire somebody and then have to fire them again. Or
Basically, you can write off the 8th to the 15th.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, for me, when we go for a whole week and just sightsee in the area for the second half of the week, but not this week.
Some of the committees are going to meet and some are not. Like the definitions committee is going to meet, but the challenge committee, I think, is not, for example.
I wish that at least the keynote or Monday morning session was Zoomed so that some of us could make believe we were there. But
yeah, that'd be awesome.
You can get the CD, you can get the MP3 for it.
Well, that's true.
I was kind of hoping they would, at least do a Zoom link to some of the sessions up so you could at least attend an audit, but they decided not to do that this year.
Anyway,
Mel, can you check your chat before we close down? Thanks.
So, Ed, once again, thank you very much. You kept people thinking and in many cases learning, which is what we're after here. Plus like we're concerned about square dancing these days, it's more social than dancing. And I think this Saturday group has grown into a social group also. At least I enjoy it, getting together with all you guys. So thanks again, Ed.
I appreciate you having me.
Job well done. And join us anytime. And if you have more ideas of things you're passionate about and like to present, let me know and we'll put you on again.
Okay, very good.
With that, I am going to leave, and I assume Dan is going to do that to everybody soon too. Cheers.
I will fire you all off later. All.
Yes, Yolanda.
When?
I'll open up